Hello again. Today we're going to continue with our painting series. I'm going to talk about two specific techniques. One's going to be using washes, the other is the dry brush technique. These are used primarily to do a little detail work. You can do various effects with them. Let's just clear these guys out for now and get started. So we're going to start with washes. Washes can do things like, we got Cthulhu here. I painted him green and then I used a wash on him, and I used, 2 or 3 washes and just put a little brown on him, a little yellow on him, just to give his, different looks, make his skin various colors. Did a little bit on his wings, did him black, and then a little bit of gray on there, just sort of dull them down a bit. A wash is basically all you're doing. You can buy pre-made washes or you can make your own. All you're really doing is you're putting a little paint. What color do we want here? I'm going to do a little bit of light gray. And very literally all you're doing is watering that down. So we're just gonna take some water, put it on there, take some more water. Like I said, you can buy pre-made washes, you don't have to. And sort of one of the main ideas of washes is what we do. We got a couple Apemen here. And I made these with basically an asphalt gray, or it's Durastreet Alley, I think was the name of the thing. You'll notice he came out a little shiny here. This one I went ahead, I put a wash on him. That's sort of hard to tell here. Let's see if we can't get this. It dulled down the shine on him, and also some of the wash just went into the cracks better, and so it gave him a two-tone of look. I'm going to do the same with this guy. I'm just going to go over him, let the water run down into the hair. Washes are good for hairy creatures, animals, anything with hair, just because it fits in the crack, and instead of just having a one color thing, you now have, 2 colors showing up. Water that down a little more. And one thing about washes, if you put them on too much, you can just take your paper towel and blot it a little, and hopefully you'll get what's on the surface and not what's in the crack, which is sort of what going for, is getting it in the cracks. And so he gets a little two-tone effect on him. Another thing, because you're putting this on wet, you want to make sure that your base coat is fairly dry. That way you're not going to just make it run by putting extra wet water on it. Still may run a little, but... And that's basically all there is to washing. That was very simple. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to talk a few techniques we can do with washes. He's got a little extra glob on his arm there. Let me get that off. And so various things, like I showed Cthulhu. Got a couple golems here. We got the stone golem and the clay golem. And again, those are mostly done with washes. I did a base coat and then I just took different colors and, darker brown, a little black, smeared around here. This guy did a light gray, did a dark gray over him. Also on this guy, you'll notice his got a little kilt on there, and that was done. I used purple and blue with that, and they came out very bright, and I didn't like the looks of that. So I just made a white wash, and I went over that, and I just sort of filtered it a little bit, gave it a little, dulled down the color so it wasn't as bright, and it looks a little better on him. Other tricks with washes, in similar fashion, you can do things transparent. So got my 3 fairies here. And all I did with them, I painted them, you know, different colors, and then I wanted their outfits to be sort of silky, sort of slightly transparent. So I did a white wash just to get a thin look over, you know, where the flesh would press against the cloth. And then, you know, the other, you know, the part back here, I just did normal whites, the parts where, you know, you aren't going to see flesh through. So it gives them a slightly transparent look to their clothing. Similar fashion, we got our Dryad. So here they did the sculpt, so it was supposed to look like she was coming out of the tree. So all I did, I painted the whole thing green, or I tried a flesh colored green, but I lost it when I had to do some touch-ups. I just did a thin wash and I just painted over from about her waist down, let that dry, took another wash, painted a little further down until I was getting just the tree color. And so it's sort of, the effect I was going for was hopefully it would look sort of like it's getting a little more faded as we go down towards the tree and she's actually coming out of it. Other tricks with washes, that's one thing I was going to do. So skeletons. You know, skeletons are white, but they aren't completely white. So what I do here, my skeletons, and I gotta get some white paint ready. Sorry about this. Yeah, I'm actually just gonna scoop this directly from the bottle. Because doing a skeleton who is completely white is just sort of, it doesn't look as good as actual skeleton. So I'm going to make a thicker wash here. I painted these guys a brownish yellow because that's sort of the color they are. And then you just sort of wash over it a little. So that way you're going to get the whiteness that people expect from skeletons. But you're also going to have a little bit other color showing through. Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and do this a little thicker. Their weapons, you know, I will paint that metallic and then I'll probably go back and do like a little brownish red wash over it and let it run, and just so you got a few rusty looking spots on them, because, you know, they're skeletons. They're, who knows how old their weapons are. But odds are there's a little bit of rust on those weapons. Yeah, this isn't showing through. I was planning on doing these guys and I forgot about them and did them as an afterthought, sort of. So I wasn't as prepared, but you can see, you know, I'm going to have to touch them up with a little more white, but you can see a few spaces where we got the brown and the, you know, yellowish brown showing through, because bones aren't going to be completely solid white. And this is just a matter of, you know, I will touch them up with a little off-white or a little white later on, but I still want a few spaces where it's just, you know, not 100% white. Also, again, washes are very watery, so this is going to run some when it dries, so might have to do a little more touch-up. Further things with wash, like hair. Hair is usually good, so her hair, I just went ahead and did like a base coat of yellow. And then I did like a brown or a tan wash over it. So her hair is not all just one solid color. It's got multiple colors showing through, sort of like real hair would have. Like I said, there's not a whole lot that can be said about washes. Just, you know, once you get the technique down, it's just practicing with it, experimenting with it. The next technique is dry brush. And this is something, we did a little bit of dry brush earlier. I mentioned it in passing as we did our little Minotaur man. And what you want with that, he's got this hair on his back, which I wanted to get. And so I did the dry brush just to make it stand out a little more and sort of almost anywhere where you get ridges or, there's highlight to be done, you can do the dry brush to make it stand out a little more. Let's see if we can got the lights on now, and it shows up a little better with the light on. And so all you're doing with the dry brush is this guy, like I said, I painted him, I put the wash on him last night, and I want to make him sort of try for the silverback gorilla look on him, just because, why not? And so I want a lighter gray is what I'm going to go with. And as the name would imply, we want this to go on dry, which, most of these paints are very liquid, as I've said several times. So what we're going to do, I'm going to take a brush. Normally it would be a flat one. I'm going to use this sort of puffy one here just because it works well. You got your paint on your palette, you get a little on the brush, and you just sort of wipe it until it gets somewhat dry, and then you just very lightly brush over them. And the idea being, because the paint isn't very liquid, it's going to go just on the surface, the raised surfaces, and you just want the tips of the brush to hit it. You don't want to press and get the brush into the grooves like you would normally trying to paint something. And you're going to have to re-coat your brush from time to time just because, like I said, this is being done dry, and so it's not going to last as long. And so sort of the idea I was going on this guy, I put my base coat of brown or dark gray on him. I did a lighter gray wash on him just to fill in the cracks. And then I'm doing the dry brush on top of that. And I'm just sort of hoping that he appears gray, but he's got that darkness that's sort of in the middle showing out. And so it just gives him an overall, multi-tone look. The light's not very good today. And this is where you can get into interesting color combinations. There we go, that's doing a little better. For instance, I got this other 8-man. And I did him brown. I used a black wash on him, and I'm going to use the same gray over him, just see what it looks like. And sort of the idea I'm hoping for here is just that the 3 colors will just make it look like he's got, more going on with him than my just painting a few times over and over. And normally when you do stuff like this, you would use similar colors. So you would do a light brown and then a dark brown wash and then, another shade of brown dry brush. But I'm just trying, on this guy, I'm just trying to see like what kind of effect you can get with various, completely different colors. So he's doing, like I said, here I'm doing a brown with a black wash and a gray, lighter gray dry brush over that. And I mean, it's sort of an interesting effect. Again, there'll be a few spots that should be touched up. But it doesn't just look like I did one color paint and said, that's all. It looks like I put more effort into it than actually I did. I mean, this You know, the original coat of paint, or the base coat that I put on, took the longest. The wash went very quick. This went fairly quick. So probably, you know, less than 15 minutes plus time for drying. And I've got something that looks like I spent longer than that on it. You know, I'm still going to have to go back and do some details, do the eyes, do the nose, do the mouth, do the little shoulder piece he's wearing. But, you know, so maybe an hour top for something that most people would guess took 2 or 3 hours to do. Not bad. You know, other dry brush things. I mean, need my brush as I talk. So things like, you know, scales. You had your dragon, he's got his scales. It's, you know, you want the scales to stand out a little, so you might do a dry brush and then some, you know, a lighter color or a darker color over the scales, just to get those to stand out. Chainmail. These guys, I showed them before. They're chainmail. I just went over them in black, and then I did a dry brush with the metallic colored paint, and it just came out, it looked better than just painting it completely metal. You know, it just gave that a little extra oomph to the figure, I guess you'd call it. Kira, you know, remember her from last time. Her little brown part here, I did that in dark brown, and then I dry brushed a little bit light brown over it, and it just gave that nice little textured burlap look to it. Our beholder, you know, this guy, I painted him purple, dry brushed some blue over the spots, and then, you know, went back and did my detail work. And so, and you know, even my mummy man that I showed at the beginning, I did him like the skeletons I was talking about. Same thing here. I painted him a base, you know, tan, and then I did mostly a white wash over him. And so, you know, it gave his bandagings a more faded, more, you know, old, rotten look to them. This has been a very short video because not a lot to talk about. You know, the two techniques were very simple. Did a little bit of dry brush on their wings there just to get the raised parts and make them stand out. So that is all for today. Next time around, I'm going to talk about modding and pinning, which are two techniques I don't use a lot. I really don't recommend them unless you're really, really into the hobby, but we're going to talk about them a little bit. So until next time, goodbye.